Guys, I've made draft after draft trying to build the perfect game week for wildcard team, and I think I've done it with money in the bank so everyone can afford this team. Let's get straight into it. Okay, so let's start with the defense. I've gone with Petrovic and goal from Bournemouth. I think going into the season, a lot of people were concerned with Bournemouth with the departures of Zabani, Huijsen, Kirkis, and Kepa. But I think one thing we've come to realize very quickly is how important Iraola's defensive structure is. So Bournemouth have already kept 2 clean sheets. And going forward, their fixtures are very good. They've got Brighton next, Newcastle, Leeds, Fulham, Crystal Palace, Nottingham Forest. Those are good fixtures from a defensive point of view. And as I said, defensive structure is a lot more important than their personnel currently for Bournemouth. So I'm going to go with Petrovic and goal. And he's also 4.5 million, which is brilliant. Saves money because I don't really like having much money in the goalkeepers anyway. Especially when you see the rest of my team, you're going to need it. I've also gone with Cucurella. I spoke a lot about Cucurella on this channel. The positions he picks up are a joke, especially when Reece James is playing. I've done a deeper analysis on Cucurella in this video here if you want to check it out. But as I keep saying, Chelsea are one of the, let's say, the better defenses in the Premier League. Cucurella will have, I think, as I said, I think he's one of the only defenders that in my eyes has a potential to get back-to-back 15 pointers. That's how highly I rate Cucurella from an FPL point of view and the positions he picks up. The next one is Munoz. I want some Crystal Palace coverage in that defensive line. And listen, anyone that's played FPL, for example, over the last few years knows the impact that Munoz can have. The attacking potential is a joke. Also, one thing that I think is very, very interesting for Munoz as well is that last game, Klein came on and Munoz moved into the front line in terms of, I think he was playing right wing. If he's playing right wing when Klein comes off for maybe like 10 minutes, in the last 10 minutes, we know Munoz or games could be a bit stretched. That could be potentially incredible attacking potential for Munoz, even though I don't think that would be a consistent theme, but just something to keep an eye on, especially with Crystal Palace's departures in the forward line. So that's something I do want to keep an eye on. And Sarr's injury, which is obviously very interesting. Next, I've gone with, let's talk about on the bench. I've gone with Van der Ven as my defender and Anderson as my 2 4.5s. Van der Ven is more, I trust Thomas Frank enough. I think he's impressed me enough from that Tottenham defensive structure point of view. Tottenham have obviously kept a couple clean sheets already. And overall, Tottenham have very good fixtures coming up. Anderson from Fulham, there's one reason. And the one reason is DEFCON. As we can see, Anderson is averaging 9.7 defensive contributions per game, which is very impressive. He's hit that 10 threshold 2 out of 3 games, which is very, very nice. I think when we're looking at other 4.5, 4.6 million defenders, I think the best one is Senesi from Bournemouth. But do I really want to double up on Bournemouth? I'm not too sure. But if I did, Senesi, as we can see, 14.3 defensive contribution. We know before, obviously, Howson came in last year, Zabani, how good Senesi was from an attacking point of view in terms of getting his head onto corners. So that's something I do really, really like from Senesi. And I think if anyone wants to go with a Bournemouth defender and not the keeper, Senesi is a great option. Virgil van Dijk is another one I want to talk about. Obviously, Liverpool's next 2 fixtures are very good before they play Crystal Palace in game week 6, I believe it is. But the level Virgil van Dijk, if you're watching Liverpool, he's playing at is a joke right now. Extremely high level. And obviously, from a DEFCON point of view, he's very, very good. The only reason I will lean towards Cucurella for now is because I still have concerns over Liverpool's defensive structure. I think against Arsenal, it was massively improved. But at the same time, is that a one-game thing? I want to see how it looks like against maybe the Leicester side when Liverpool open up a bit more. So that's something I want to keep an eye on before I move to Virgil van Dijk. Because I do think he is probably, him and Cucurella and maybe Gabriel are the best 6 million defenders. But for now, that's something I want to keep an eye on. Let's move over to the midfield. Okay, so let's get into the midfield. I've gone with Elliot Anderson. Of course, if you've owned him over the first 3 games, it's going to be very frustrating in terms of getting 11 defensive contributions 3 games in a row. He's obviously picked up an assist. I think the only concern for some people might be with Elliot Anderson is minutes going forward with obviously Europe and the signing of, for example, a Douglas Luiz. But I don't think anyone can do what Elliot Anderson could do in the Nottingham Forest midfield. Of course, his ball progression numbers are very good. Obviously, his ball recovery numbers are very good. That's why he's so close to that DEFCON marker. But I think overall, when you watch full 90 minutes of Nottingham Forest, full 90 minutes of Anderson is how much he's almost like a leader on the pitch. And I don't think Nottingham Forest can replace Elliot Anderson in that way, which is why I'm pretty certain he will still get 90 minutes for Nottingham Forest, even with Europe coming up. The next man is Mo Salah. Does anything need to be said? The king of FPL, of course, he has been quiet over the first 3 games, but as I said, he's a 90-minute man. He's on penalties. He's playing for one of the best attacks in the league. I think we all have some concern about the rest of Liverpool's front line in terms of Ekatike, Isak, Gakpo, how those minutes are going to be shared. But one thing we know is Salah is going to be play 90 minutes until AFCON, and then we're going to look to take him out of our teams. But for now, Salah has to be a lock. The next one, Semenyo. As I said with Petrovic, Bournemouth had good fixtures coming up. Semenyo, we know the level he's playing at right now. Against Tottenham again, he didn't get a goal contribution, but he was very, very close. I think he almost scored with a beautiful header from a beautiful ball from David Brooks, was it? From the right-hand side. But as I said, Semenyo is Bournemouth's main talisman going forward. Even last year, 4th most shots. The ball's going to be fair to Semenyo. Semenyo is very good at creating separation and getting the shots up, which is obviously something that I like from an FPL point of view. So that's why I've gone with Semenyo. And obviously started the season very well. The first 2 games getting goal contributions. That performance against Liverpool was sensational. The next man, Jack Grealish. So this is one where it's probably a bit of a toss-up between do you want a Jack Grealish or do you want an Iliman Ndiaye? I think both of them have their pros and cons. For example, Jack Grealish is not on penalties like Iliman Ndiaye. But one thing I've gone with Jack Grealish is over, let's say, the other Everton midfielders is the last 2 games he's pretty much played 90 minutes. And he's got 11 defensive contributions in both. So he's won away again, which is obviously something that I think when you watch Jack Grealish, you can kind of tell that he's he works very hard. He gets into a lot of duels, which can obviously help in terms of tackles, interceptions. It increases your chances. That makes sense. And I think one thing that I maybe lean towards Jack Grealish over Iliman Ndiaye is because Everton are feeding Jack Grealish more, he will pop up better in the bonus point system, if that makes sense. Just because naturally Jack Grealish will have more of the ball, create more chances, get more shots off. And I think a lot of people, for example, will say, Baines, why are you not going with Kudos, for example, with Spurs? If you look at Kudos' XG over the first 3 games, it's been nothing short of poor. I think 2 of the 3 games, he's got an XG of 0, which means he hasn't had any shots, really. That's why Grealish's obviously creativity, when you watch him from the eye test, is obviously there. From a statistical point of view, his XG is a lot higher than Kudos as well, which is why I would lean towards Grealish. Obviously, if you want to go with Iliman Ndiaye, I think that's a fine pick. But for now, I've gone with Grealish. The next one is Paqueta. I think this is a popular pick right now, popping up in the FPL community. Of course, I think the last two games he's hit the DEFCON marker, which is very good. And also, he's on penalties. And I think one thing that we can say with Paqueta right now and West Ham is when you watch Paqueta, you can kind of see he's back to his best. Obviously, over the last 18 months, there was a lot going on in terms of the betting scandal, for example. I think his City move collapsed. So I think maybe he might not have been in the right head space. But for now, the level that he's playing at for West Ham is very, very good. And we know Paqueta is a good footballer. Everyone can see it. He's on penalties. Listen, he's basically a cheap Bruno. We're getting Paqueta for penalties. We're getting Paqueta for DEFCON. One's 5.9 million, one's 9 million. Of course, Bruno Fernandes will probably do more in open play than a Paqueta. But listen, let's see how it goes with Paqueta. I still think he's a very, very solid FPL pick. And remember, just because a player plays for a poor team doesn't mean he's a poor FPL pick. We've seen it so many times over the years. That's why that Paqueta is the one that's going to complete my midfield. Okay, so let's look at my front line. I've gone with Erling Haaland and I've gone with João Pedro and also Krupa Jr. on the bench. Can't forget him. But let's start with João Pedro. Chelsea have been brilliant. João Pedro, especially the last 2 games, has been brilliant. We know with obviously the injury to Liam Delap, João Pedro's minutes now have increased, which is a massive, massive positive. Chelsea are obviously one of the strongest sides in the Premier League. They have good fixtures coming up. Listen, his ownership is so high. Do you really want to bank against João Pedro right now in FPL? For me, the answer is no. The man next to him is Erling Haaland. I think a lot of people are going to say Salah and Haaland is a bit too much, but I think looking at the rest of my team structure, I don't think I've compromised it too much to fit both of them in. Again, I think people still have question marks over Manchester City. I think it's only natural, especially after last season. But Erling Haaland has proved, I think over the first 3 games, no player has accumulated a higher XG than Erling Haaland in the Premier League. Even against the tougher opposition against Spurs, he still had his chances. So that's why I would want Erling Haaland. But also at the same time, the main reason is game week 6, City have Burnley. Game week 7, City have Brentford. Those are, I think, fixtures where Salah might not be the best captain, and obviously Erling Haaland will be the best captaincy option. So having that captaincy coverage of Erling Haaland during those difficult weeks for maybe a Mo Salah is brilliant. And listen, Erling Haaland is probably one of the only players in the Premier League that can get back-to-back hat-tricks. Of course, that City team, I don't think is hit the same level as maybe spells in the past. I still think there's a bit of a teething period in terms of how City are setting up, but we know Erling Haaland is a brilliant FPL asset. As I said, on the bench, Krupa Jr. This one, listen, I've gone with him because he's probably the only 4.5 million player that's going to play. Obviously, Mark Guehi's now back at Chelsea. I'm not saying Krupa Jr. is going to start for Bournemouth, by the way, but he comes on for that 1 pointer, which you never know might be needed. But I don't mind if people pick another 4.5. The only reason I say that is if you go with this exact same team, and at one point you might want to go with an Ivan Nilsson or a Senesi from Bournemouth, you already tripled up on Bournemouth, so you're going to waste a transfer taking out Krupa Jr. So going with a random 4.5 from maybe like our Wolves, because you know you're not really going to have 3 Wolves players at any point, is not a bad idea. But I think this is a very good team for Wildcard. There's obviously money in the bank if people want to make changes. Maybe double up on Crystal Palace defense with maybe Lacroix, who ranks very highly for DEFCON. Maybe there's other changes that people want to make. Maybe a Reinders from Manchester City instead of Elliot Anderson. But listen, I'm very happy with how this wildcard looks. Let me know what you guys think down below in the comment section. And make sure you guys like the video, subscribe to the channel, and we will be back soon.